Yeah, I think we're live.
How exciting.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this is our first Facebook Live. So can you tell us if you can actually hear us first? There's a bit of a lag on here, so we'll wait for it to kick in.
So I guess just while we're waiting to hear if anyone is there,
I think we'll...
this is all a bit new to us. I guess we'll start by introducing ourselves, yeah?
Yes, 2 seconds. I got my phone going now as well. Let me just check if everybody can hear us as well. Coming through. Yeah, they reckon they can hear us. So yeah, we want to start introducing ourselves. I'm Ewan. I suffer from cervical myelopathy. I joined Myelopathy.org in 2017. I met Ben and Mark at the University of Cambridge. And then introducing ourselves. I'm Ewan. History, I suffer from cervical myelopathy. I joined Myelopathy. I'll let Ben introduce himself, and thank you, Ben, for taking your time out today as well from your busy schedule. I'm just glad it's not a Monday anyway.
Yeah, it's very, very hot. Unfortunately, the only place with any signal seems to be inside my car. But yeah, thanks, Ewan. I mean, I'm a neurosurgeon from Cambridge. I met Ewan over Facebook, really. We were trying to reach more people with the condition with myelopathy, try and help understand it and direct our research. And the relationship has blossomed, and we've helped to create Myelopathy.org, which I hope has got fantastic ambitions, really, to improve the outcomes of this condition, which at the moment are, as you all know, tremendously devastating. And the more we can do to join our voices together and to shout to all the people involved, I think the more we can do to make a difference. And I think that's what these sorts of relationships can do now in the modern world. And this is an example of it. You know, Ewan's in Cardiff, I'm in a car in Cambridge, and whoever else is listening, hopefully, is all over the world. I think
we've lost a bit of audio with you there, Ben.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're back now. You're back now.
Back now. Okay.
So we want to go forward with, as you can see, we've been sort of advertising the RECODE DCM, posting that on our community page, and I think Ben is here really to explain to us what RECODE is all about and what it means to us, the people who actually suffer with myelopathy. Looking back in 2015, we really didn't have a voice, so this is our opportunity to sort of ask you for your feedback, because there is such a variety of symptoms and outcomes that your information is really key to how we can develop a better understanding of myelopathy. So I think Ben can actually explain this a bit more than I can. So if you want to take that away, Ben.
Yeah, and obviously I think you can see the Facebook page. If anyone has any questions, feel free anytime. We can jump in and answer them. But I was sort of hoping today really to try and explain a little bit about the sort of research ambitions of Myelopathy.org now that we've been going for a short time. And I think it all started by trying to connect with people who obviously live with the condition, to understand their experiences and some of the troubles they were having. Because we know in research that when you identify the problems with the individual and you focus your research questions to those problems directly, you have the best chance of making the most immediate impact on that condition. And I think that was the sort of reason we started to look at things online and met people like you. And I go back to one of the first surveys we conducted, which some of you may well have participated in, which was a very general survey to try and give us an overview of who people were and how badly they were affected by the disease. And that reached 1,100 different individuals. And that's the largest ever survey of any kind in terms of myelopathy research by some margin. And I think it gave us a fantastic overview of some of the problems. It's highlighted, for example, the impact of delayed diagnosis, and we presented that data now at a few different conferences, and it's going to be published hopefully shortly in one of the spine journals. And we've shown directly how those delays in diagnosis can link to greater disability in terms of become more likely to be unemployed, and more likely to be reliant on other people, more likely to have more severe form of myelopathy. And that's led on to other work subsequently. And we've also shown that people are tremendously reliant on others around them, and that can have an impact on their quality of life. And the final thing that's really interesting is that we've identified from the community, you guys, that actually pain is a major feature of the disease that you really struggle with. And that's really interesting, because from the research side, pain had never really been researched in myelopathy before. And, researchers are very fixated on sort of movement of hands and legs, but never really pain. And hopefully when this data starts to come out, and we are trying to promote it in the various sort of scientific circles, we can start to get research targeted to that problem, which clearly is a major issue for our community. So I think what we're trying to say really is that we are really listening to you guys en masse, and it's helping to direct the science. And really the RECODE project that we're sort of promoting now is a sort of step forward from that, where we're trying to set specifically the research agenda for myelopathy. And further than that, if you do a research study in myelopathy, what are the components that should be measured? And that has to come from the perspective of you guys, but also some of the professionals involved, so that we get a whole consensus on where the research that we do that. And I think with that, we can really strike at the heart of some of the major problems and lead to impact in a more immediate fashion. So and that's what I'm really here to try and promote a little bit of, because we've had some great responses from the community, but really it's a question of reaching as many people as possible. And that's not just anyone affected, but anyone with lived experiences, so anyone you rely on or work with or whatever. All of these experiences can feed into this process.
Yeah, I think we all know that wherever we are in the world, it's the GP that is our first port of call. So we are really desperate to get sort of the GPs on board. If they can, join the RECODE team, because that is a really, really important sort of stopping point for us, really. We were looking at the results that we haven't got many GPs that have actually, done the RECODE surveys. So if your GPs want to get involved, head to the website, which is RECODE DCM. I'll put up a link for the website now, and that'll be absolutely great if you can do that.
Yeah, I think that's you and strikes at the heart of it, because I think at the moment what we have in this condition is it's a really condition that's treated by surgeons at some stage, and they're certainly an easy voice to reach because they identify with myelopathy, but it's actually managed by all sorts of different professionals, as you no doubt are aware. And from our work in England, we know that almost everyone initially consults their GP, and then other specialties involved, such as neurology, physiotherapy, rheumatology. There are many, many others, but certainly GPs are often the first port of call. And they will have an interesting perspective on this, because we're trying hard, reflecting on the experience of you guys, that diagnosis is delayed and this can have an impact, to understand how we can refine that. But it's, not to dismiss the problem, but it's certainly difficult to detect this condition early, and especially if you're not a specialist. So that sort of area of research is really important. And if anyone has access or relationships with their GPs, then getting them involved would be really helpful.
I think it's, word of mouth is the best thing we can actually do. We sort of, we found the social media is the best way of actually getting the information out there. But word of mouth, if you know anybody who, who comes from who is a health professional, you can pass on the details. It's really, really important that we get a sort of wide reach out there. Let's talk a bit more about RECODE and why we actually set it up, and who is currently involved with RECODE as well, Ben.
Yeah, okay. So I sort of mentioned at the beginning, it was all really about trying to get everyone in the world on the same page about what should be happening. So what we've been doing really in Cambridge is we've showed that there are actually a lot of research going on in myelopathy, but it's not very well directed, and often it's measuring different things in different ways or different aspects of the disease. That makes the data very difficult to compare or pull together or really, understand well, that can change practice. So what we felt was that if we could try and get everyone on board, produce some guidelines about what are the research questions that are most pressing and how you should do research in terms of how you should design a research study, then the output from that would be research that can be more readily transferred into practice in terms of changing how we care and manage for this condition. And this is not something that we are the first to do. If you look at other diseases, I guess a close relative of our own is traumatic spinal cord injury, that's sort of from car crashes and this sort of thing. They've done this process, and it's helped them to come up with the top 10 research questions that need answering. And then with that information and that basis, you can go over to the funding bodies around the world and say, look, this is what matters to our community. These are the research questions that need funded. And it directly helps the funders set those priorities. And then researchers can go to the funders and answer those questions. So it's a little bit of a process, but I think it really has a major impact on how we can change the direction of research to make sure it matters to everyone involved. And that is particularly for those who are living with the condition. And we're very, very happy, of course, that lots of people have come to support this process from a professional side, at least. We've got the University of Cambridge involved. We have the National Institute of Health Research in the UK. We have an organisation called AO Spine, which is probably the largest collection of spinal professionals in the world from all over the world. And they're supporting this project as well. And we're about sort of a few months in now to doing this survey, but the survey is the key component, which sort of gets as many opinions as possible into it, so that we can start to look at, review, and draw some sort of recommendations from.
Yeah, and I think what we're going to highlight there is that the variance in the symptoms and sort of different levels of the disabilities that people with myelopathy can have. I think our feedback is really, really key, because sort of we can't really base one sort of person with myelopathy compared to another person, because we're looking at the length of the time that it's taken for them to be diagnosed, to have treatment, and so on. So as we all know, with early treatment, we can sort of stop that disability, and we can help help myelopathy in the future when we gather this information. So our feedback is really, really important, I think.
I think, I'm totally on board with that. I mean, that's one of my major lessons from getting involved with Myelopathy.org and meeting you. And it's so insightful to meet people who are living with it and understand their experiences, because it really helps direct the science. And going back to what you were saying there, when you do this survey, there is unfortunately a little bit at the beginning, which is a bit slow, which tries to understand in very general terms your experience of myelopathy, because it's very important that when we get to the end of this, that everyone is represented, that all the different types of myelopathy, different experiences of myelopathy are represented, that the research questions at the end capture the whole disease to make sure it's a fair representation of what should be going on and not focused on certain aspects because that's the only people who've answered the survey. So there is a bit of questions at the beginning about your experience of myelopathy, and that's purely to help us understand and make sure we've got full representation of the disease.
Brilliant. I think we got some few questions there from some of the viewers. 2 seconds. I got a question here from Lara Smith. It's about the hermit sign. It's the electric shock sensation down the spine. The hermit sign can be one of the earliest features of cervical spondylomyopathy. Please, can you explain how it can be both?
How it can be?
The hermit sign sensation down the spine or into the limbs. Can't read. It's sort of cropped off. Could you just explain a little bit about the hermit sign and how it's actually present in people with myelopathy?
So the membrane around the spinal cord is quite sensitive. It's full of nerves, and it can be quite painful. And the concept behind the Limit sign is that if there is contact with that membrane, then you can trigger off electric shocks, particularly when that membrane is in very close proximity to the spinal cord. So it's a feature of spinal cord disease, and we typically ask individuals if they get a shooting sensation, which can be typically either sort of neck downwards or into their arms, based on movement, because we're asking them to sort of irritate this lining based on movement. And it's not just found in our sort of cervical spondylotic myelopathy, it's also found in other forms of myelopathy. But it's certainly a useful and simple test or question to ask individuals suffering from this sort of condition, because it helps to identify whether it's a myelopathy problem or not. But I would strongly say it's not something that everyone experiences, and therefore it's not a sort of capture-all type thing. And again, it's not just cervical spondylotic myelopathy, which has the Limit sign. So it's a very useful sign, but certainly not perfect in terms of being perfect for us.
Yeah, I think that takes us back to the variable symptoms that one person can have that can differ from another person, sort of thing.
Yeah.
We have a question here from Debbie Hutchins. I'm seeing a consultant regarding lumpectomy on C4, 5, 6, and 7 in two minds because my mobility is still good, no bladder bowel problems. Concerned will do more. She is concerned that it will do more harm than good, really. What's your advice about surgery? I think the feedback there from the group as well, if you're part of the group,
Yeah.
is that treatment is better sooner than later, really. So
Yeah. I think the overall, on average, treatment is better sooner than later, but it certainly has to be based on the individual. And if you look at the recent international guidelines that actually Dr. Cotter, one of the charity trustees, was involved in, what they're saying now is that they categorize how bad your myelopathy is in three categories: mild, moderate, or severe.
yeah,
They do that based on a special grading scale called the MJOA, which we've used a lot of in some of our surveys. And essentially, they recommend surgery for anyone with moderate to severe myelopathy. They recommend surgery for anyone with progressive symptoms. If you've got mild but very stable symptoms, then there is a sense of evidence that maybe we can watch and wait. But always the concern is that waiting too long leaves you with irreversible damage. And it's a very difficult a judgment to make, therefore. And it depends a little bit on which surgeon you speak to, but that's a sort of general overview. So I think when I see individuals in clinic, it's really about trying to understand how bad their myelopathy is and what's the trajectory of their disease. Because if there is progressive disease, progressive injury, I think the evidence is very strong that an operation sooner rather than later is a good idea. Because if you wait too long, the damage may be irreversible.
brilliant. Thank you, Ben. We got another question here from Larry Newland. The pain and numbness on my right side is bad, but I'm used to it. Far worse is the lack of energy. Legs feel like lead weight most of the days. Fatigue is an issue that is spoken about quite often within the group, and a question that we haven't had answered really. So that's a really good one. Is the fatigue side of cervical myelopathy?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and it's something that people ask me a lot of, but I unfortunately haven't got a perfect answer for it. There's no perfect explanation for why individuals can experience these fatigue and these symptoms. And I think that's the short answer, really. I mean, we know from experience from many other neurological conditions that are chronic like this, that they experience the same sort of things. So whether it's a question of managing and coping with these everyday disabilities that has that impact, or it's a direct effect on the nervous system, we just don't know. And I guess the leading question is, what can you do about it? And again, there aren't any perfect answers for that. And I think it's a question of trying things out yourself in terms of perhaps sort of more based exercise therapies or medication, different things. But I haven't got a perfect solution that I can advise on that.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. We have another question here from Bo Green. Thank you, bro. I would like to know if steroids can be tried as an option before surgery.
That's an interesting question, actually. I think at the moment how to answer this question? So there is a body of evidence that suggests that perhaps around the time of surgery, or if you have a sudden deterioration in your myelopathy, that there is maybe a role for steroids in helping through that process. There isn't any evidence at the moment that steroids can support a sort of non-operative management of myelopathy. That doesn't exist. But there is a bit of very sort of low quality, but not absolute deterioration in your myelopathy. The short course of steroids might be helpful, and also perhaps that there's a role for steroids around the time of your operation, because one of the sort of debated areas of the operation is that although overall it's very good, some people can experience deterioration after their operation, and there's an idea behind whether suddenly releasing the pressure on the spinal cord can cause some trouble, and there is an idea that maybe steroids help in that situation, but it's all a little bit, we're not quite sure. I'm not going to put my life on one or the other. So I think the short answer to that is that in selected cases, there may be a role for steroids, but we're not fully sure of the evidence for that at the moment.
Yeah. We're going back to it's individuals really, how individuals sort of respond to treatment. If it's if it's medical, some sort of medication works for one person and it doesn't work for another person. We've seen that within the group as well. So you've got to sort of look and find what actually works for you. Like myself, I find amitriptyline is the best thing that I can use for my nerve pain, and I've heard conflicting stories in the group. So it's an individual choice, and it's how your body actually responds to it.
I think that is what I was going to add on. I think that is one of the great difficulties for us. I think everyone is so different. It makes things very difficult to research, because if we could get a group of patients who is exactly the same together, we might be able to get a better signal for what works for that individual, but we're not there yet. But that's certainly the way research is heading in terms of genetics, in terms of how we characterize everyone as separate people as opposed to a big cluster together.
Yeah, definitely. I got another good question here from Lara. Thank you, Lara, again. Is a patient's height ever measured after surgery? I am 3/4 inch taller than I have ever been. Can this stretch the spinal cord?
I mean, I can understand perhaps. So certainly sometimes, for example, for the anterior surgeries where cages are put in, I guess they can sometimes increase the disc height, maybe add a few millimeters, but I wouldn't think too much. But no, we don't. That's not something we've ever thought to measure or have measured, I don't think. I'll have to come back to you on that, Lara.
Yeah. I don't think I've actually improved in the height-wise. Anyway, I'm still 6'2", I think. If anybody's got any more questions, that'd be brilliant. I think these questions that have been asked really sort of gives us a good idea that we really need the feedback of you, the myelopathy community, with these surveys. There's bits in the surveys where you can write whatever you want in there and go into whatever detail you want, because it's so important to actually pass this information on to people like Ben, Mark, and everybody else who is looking into myelopathy. And it's a great opportunity for us to have a voice, really. And the future surveys, if I believe is correct, will sort of be all developed around our feedback. Is that correct, Ben?
That's absolutely spot on. So at the moment we're gathering ideas, and one might be Lara's idea of whether or not she can be made taller after her surgery. And with all those ideas, we sort of look at whether those questions have been answered or not. If they have been answered, then we can come back to you and give you the answer. If they haven't been answered, then we're going to produce a short list of all those questions, and then we'll come back to you guys to rank which you think are the most important at the moment. And that's hopefully going to help direct the research in the field, definitely.
Brilliant. We've had another question here by Brian Anderson. Thank you, Brian. Took seizures after taking gabapentin and pregabalin. Are there any alternatives?
So I presume you're talking about the management of sort of nerve-related pain and things.
Yeah.
There are alternatives. I mean, you mentioned amitriptyline, and there are many, many more. I think once you step into the realms of perhaps trialing one or two medications, and either you're using in combination or you're not having the benefit you want from it, or you've got side effects, it's certainly a good idea to try and seek some sort of expertise from a sort of pain medicine side. And they are particularly difficult to access in the UK. It depends what country you're coming from, but they are around. Because those are the kind of doctors who have real good experience in trying to sort of work the combinations around the individual. And I think that would be a sensible route to go for Brianne.
We have another question coming in here from Roberto P. Shields. I've been struggling for a few years. One doctor will say myelopathy, and another is very reluctant and says don't Google. Any ideas of getting a definite conclusion? Okay,
that does sound frustrating. I guess it a little bit depends on his circumstances. Now, if there's any uncertainty in medicine, we typically look for a second opinion, and that might be the most sensible thing to go for in terms of another opinion to try and bring things together. I mean, in terms of diagnosing myelopathy that we talk about, we're really looking at a combination of an MRI scan and a clinical assessment. Those are the key features. There are sometimes other roles for perhaps nerve conduction studies or what we call dynamic imaging, where we ask you to move your neck in certain contexts, but really it's about identifying a doctor, doing a good clinical examination and looking at the scans, and then taking it from there. So I would think possibly around the lines of us.
Yeah, that really emphasizes the importance of the GP position as well. Like we spoke about earlier, that a lot of GPs are reluctant to say anything because of their knowledge on myelopathy. My GP was very sort of straight and direct to me, and he said, "It's above my head, and I'm going to pass you on to a neurosurgeon," which is where I really am going to have the answers. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't know the circumstances for Roberto, but I think this very, very early myelopathy is particularly difficult to diagnose at the moment because the symptoms are not sort of so obvious. The examination findings are not so obvious. The MRI can be not so obvious. So it can be very difficult to come to an absolute conclusion, and you don't want to make the wrong decision, obviously. But I think a second opinion might be helpful. Or just seeing how things go. And I think one of the things I tell GPs saying to look out for, which is really the feature that would make me worry most about myelopathy, is the idea that things are getting worse. Because a progressive condition, I think, is one of the most important triggers to think, actually, could this be myelopathy?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Ben. We have a question here from Frank Dutton. Frank, is physiotherapy good for aiding recovery post-surgery, especially if it's a major 5-level plus, right? One of my physios thought my spasms were not connected to myelopathy.
So there's two parts of the question, isn't it? So
yeah, is physiotherapy...
The easier part is spasms related to your myelopathy. Well, the answer is, in short, yes. I mean, spasms can also be caused by other things, and I think certainly after you've had major surgery at multiple levels in your neck, there is a change in the loading of your spine, and that can fatigue muscles and lead to spasm, particularly with... I guess the answer is yes, it can be directly the effect of the myelopathy damage on the spinal cord, but it can also be the impact of having had the treatment. The first question was about physiotherapy. I think this is a really interesting one. I think this is an area we need to spend a bit more time thinking about, certainly as researchers, because we actually did a review of the current literature, and there's nothing really on this to give us an answer, which is why I'm being a bit cautious. But if you look at any other form of neurological condition, the obvious one is stroke. Rehabilitation. It's about training the nervous system again to work and function again and relearn. And we don't have that in myelopathy at the moment. And, in a very simple sense to myself, I think that surely must be helpful. And if you look at traumatic spinal cord injury from sort of car crashes and this sort of business, they have much better access to sort of rehabilitation programs through spinal cord injury centers, and they derive benefit. So I think there is a role for physiotherapy after surgery. I can't categorically say that at the moment, but I think that's something we need to look at in more and more detail. And we'll have to come back to you, Frank.
Yeah, as a sort of person with myelopathy, I think, you've got to develop to sort of listen to your body and sort of think to yourself, right, am I able to do this? Pain is there for a reason, I think, and, that is telling your mind to sort of, cool down. You might be doing a bit of more damage than you think you're actually doing. So thank you, Ben. That's a great answer.
And I think the other thing is physiotherapy's got lots of different roles. It can try and help with the pain, specifically in the neck. It can try and improve recovery, but also it's got a role in trying to adapt your body to cope with disability. So, if there's something you can no longer do, then there are potentially different actions or different ways around doing those sorts of things. And so I think it's got a really important role, and I really think we should look at trying to expand that and find greater reason to make it happen for our sufferers. But we're not there yet. Another project.
Brilliant. Something, Lara, again. Can we organise a Myelopathy.org conference on a yearly basis where patients and doctors can meet? Well, we spoke earlier that hopefully our Myelopathy.org Facebook live feed will be sort of a regular feature as well. Logistically, that's the only problem of getting people in one place. Yeah. So this is why social media is so helpful, that it can get all of us from all across the world in this one sort of space. But yeah, never say never, I say. What do you think, Ben?
I think, why not? I think it'd be a fantastic idea.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic idea. And I'd love to make it happen. I think, as you were saying, it's difficult to pick the location. We've got people all over the world here, and where we should do it. But I think that'd be a fantastic idea. And I hark back to the same thing that I learned so much when I meet people all dealing with the same thing, whether it's people living with it, caring for it, whatever it is. I think it's such a rewarding experience to interact like that, and I think we should definitely look at doing something like that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I think that sort of covers all our questions, and I think that brings an end to our very first Facebook Live. And I must say,
all right, brilliant.
We haven't had any.
I think so. Haven't had any. I don't think I've had any problems so far.
No,
but I would say to everyone listening, I think, and anyone who does listen afterwards, please do send in your thoughts and feedback, because we really think this sort of feature could work well. We can get lots of different professionals on here. Michelle, who's sort of running the charity now, is really keen to come and talk to you and keep you updated on what's going on. And I guess the final thing is just to stress, please go to the website recode-dcm.com and give your thoughts and feedback, and pressure anyone who's involved with you or your care to sort of give their feedback as well. Because the more people we reach, the more represented this will be, and the more relevant it will be to you guys. So that's my plea at the end of this broadcast.
Yeah, we've got some literature in the actual myelopathy support group. If you're not a member already, I think there's a link below that you can actually join as well. Feel free to join. Make sure you answer all the questions. It's a closed group, and we're trying to sort of not leave any spammers in there. The admins are doing a great job at the moment of keeping them out. So I'll probably run the Recode DCM animation after this, but can I say a big thank you for everybody's actually joined. Please leave your comments, as Ben said, in the box below, and we'll look at your feedback then. And thank you very much. Thank you, Ben, for sort of having your time as well.
Speak soon.
There we are.
Pleasure. Anytime.
See you all soon. Thank you very much.
Do you or one of your loved ones have degenerative cervical myelopathy, DCM? Do you know someone who does? Are you treating or caring for patients with DCM? Or maybe you conduct research in the field. DCM is a condition where wear and tear arthritis affects the part of the spine in your neck, causing structural changes that compress and damage your spinal cord. It can be very painful and affect a person's ability to use their arms, legs, even their bowels and bladder, and eventually lead to muscle weakness in all 4 limbs. Scientists and doctors around the world are working on DCM, but we need your help to find answers faster. We have launched the AO Spine Recode DCM study to establish a set of guidelines so that scientists and doctors can ask the right questions and develop better treatments. The study has 2 parts. First, we bring together patients, family members, careers, and healthcare professionals to find the top 10 priorities that matter most to both patients and healthcare professionals. In part 2 of the study, the stakeholders will agree on the set of outcomes that should be included in all DCM studies. Outcomes are the consequences of disease that are measured or monitored. For example, grip strength and pain. However, you cannot compare pain to strength. With a standardized set of outcomes, researchers can compare like for like, different treatments, and find out what treatments work and what don't. This is where you come in. You could be one of our experts. We start with a series of online surveys where we collect insights. The results of these rounds are discussed in a final consensus meeting, where decisions on what is most important for all stakeholders involved. The AO Spine Recode DCM study is open to everyone who has experience with DCM. This is a great opportunity to get your voice heard and help improve patient care. To register for the study and for more information, please go to the study website, recode-dcm.com.